Hello, I'm Pheasant Klopp, and welcome back to my channel. I hope you've enjoyed things so far. I've been trying to improve a little bit with each video, so hopefully this one will again be better than the one before it. My previous videos were about how to fix DC Comics. I covered changes I'd make to the DC Universe, basically starting over. Then I'd discuss how I'd fixed Green Lantern. Today we are discussing Batman. The last video in the series is going to be two more at least. Wonder Woman and Superman will be the topics of those. Now, let's get started with changes I would make to DC comic characters today starring Batman. And cue the theme to the animated series. But watch out! A major alteration to Batman's beginning and background is before us. A quick background: Batman was created in 1939 by Bob Kane and Bill Finger. His background is simple. His parents were killed when he was a child, and he vowed to spend his life ensuring that no other child would ever have happened to them what happened to him. He is considered by many to be the greatest superhero, even though, ironically, he has no superpowers. While he is at the peak of physical perfection for a human, it's his mind and his willpower that makes him the legend he is to many fans. It's also amusing to many that for someone considered a loner, Batman has an extensive bat family, and yes, they tend to throw the bat hyphen at everything. Robin the Boy Wonder was introduced as his first sidekick in April of 1940, with others to follow, including Batgirl, who originally the name Batgirl was hyphenated, Batwoman, and the Huntress, among a plethora of others. His depiction has varied through the years, from dark and gritty to pure camp. Batman has been in pretty much every kind of media: comics, radio, TV, movies. You see pictures of him online, uh, professional works, things made by fans. Speaking of which, I saw a guy at a convention years ago, right after the Michael Keaton movie came out, and it was a guy in a bat costume. And a couple of us were waiting on the elevator, and when it opened up, there was a guy in a bat costume like Michael Keaton's. And I mean, it was so good. And he was standing right there in the middle of the door for the elevator. We all just stood there and stared. I think if we'd been criminals, we probably would have turned around and run. That's how realistic that outfit was. Amazing. As far as fixes for Batman, uh, pretty well take him back to the basics. Have a set personality. The Dark Knight detective has been portrayed in so many different ways that it's easy to lose track. And if any real person who had this many personalities, I guess, for lack of a better word, he'd be put away somewhere, because he'd be going from Adam West's Batman camp to The Dark Knight Returns, classic. It'd be terrible. Um, you can't let him get to be too funny or campy in the comic books, because it doesn't work in a comic the way it would on television if you're doing a show like the 1960s Batman. It's a different genre. He can get too gritty also, where he ends up being as bad as the criminals he fights. He's a resolute, serious character. And I think Batman has become the real face, and Bruce has become the mask most of the time. He's a man who does not kill, and I repeat, Batman does not kill. He was created in the blood of his parents' death. He does not, will not, if he can avoid it, spill the blood of others like that. That's just not what he does. Background characters, as I've said before, they have to be introduced over time. You can't just dump them in all at once. Reboots love doing that, bringing everything all at once, but then it loses the weight of the event. If you bring in Batman and Robin right off the bat, then you've lost the introduction of Robin. It's irrelevant. He's a piece of the furniture, basically. They have to wait a few years. I mean, Robin was introduced a year after the introduction of Batman. I would say it's about right. It gives Batman time to get his feet under him. It gives you time to set up Gotham City and the universe around them. In Justice League: The New Frontier, Batman has an interesting comment when Superman mentions that he's changed his look and now he has Robin as a sidekick. Let's just say I set out to scare criminals, not children. Needless to say, of course, Robin Wood for the first decade or so, that's Dick Grayson. It wouldn't be beyond belief, though, if they started calling him Richard, because let's face it, Dick has connotations that really should be avoided anymore. It's just not a casually used name. Batgirl, the other most well-known of Batman's associates, was introduced in 1961 as Betty Kane, niece of Kathy Kane, and as I said earlier, it's the hyphenated Batgirl. Kathy Kane, also known as Batwoman. The two were created to be love interests for Batman and Robin, but obviously it didn't work out that way. The most commonly known Batgirl, Barbara Gordon, was introduced in 1967. She debuted in Detective Comics before she appeared in the Batman television show in the third season that same year. Her debut in the new universe would have to wait a few years. She would have to go a few stages before appearing. First of all, she would have to be there when Batman becomes a known figure, or the legend or myth that there's someone in the night and it's a bat. That would have to be set up first. She would have to come to know and respect him and want to emulate him. Then she would have to train, take up the mantle. These don't have to be done in this order. In the original timeline for Batgirl, Barbara Gordon was already, I think, a martial artist and gymnast before she decided to become Batgirl. But it's a step that she would have to take, physically preparing herself for the role. Finally, she would have to get the equipment and the costume and all these things to take the first step as Batgirl. An interesting thing about equipment, though, they put Batgirl on a motorcycle, which is interesting because you don't usually think of women on motorcycles. You think them driving cars. I think women on bikes are cool, but it's just not the first thing you think about when you think of a woman getting from point A to point B. You think she's going to get a car. That's just the way most people are. Maybe I'm just showing my age. Now, Batwoman, who originally appeared in 1956, was Kathy Kane. Years after she was retired, the character was reimagined in her current form in 2006. Neither version of the character could appear for a couple of years, although the older version could be brought in only a couple of years as someone trying to get Batman's attention, wanting to be that love interest, to be Mrs. Batman. Also, in 2006, Damian Wayne was introduced as the biological son of Batman. He would be a long way off, a number of years before you could even introduce the Al Ghuls and have that little fling. While I'm sure that Bruce has had women accusing him of fathering children with him, I would think he would avoid those situations because they would distract from the mission. Although you could have some fun with that. As far as expanding the world or making any changes to it, Alfred made his debut in 1943. Honestly, it's impossible for me to see Batman could ever get along without Alfred for any time at all. So this would be the exception to the rule, as Alfred would be there from the very beginning. He's been retconned to be the one who basically brought up Bruce anyway. So why not? That has been the case for so long that he would have to be there at the very beginning. But why not expand his role? He is generally thought to be a former actor, an intelligence agent. Why not make use of any contacts he still has? I can't recall any time in the comics when he would say, well, sir, let me go see if some of my people know something. And he contacts some of the people he used to work with in the intelligence agency. Or maybe he knows someone who has played a character who might have a trick or two that Bruce needs to go undercover. At the same time, maybe bring in his family as agents of the Batman. That step might be a little too far out there because you wouldn't want them to find out that Bruce was Batman. So that last step probably be a bit too much. Or two, just because you get out of Gotham doesn't mean you've escaped the Batman. have Batman going out of the city to get criminals who think they've gotten away. You could take that vacation in Italy, Mr. Druglord, but that doesn't mean you're out of his reach. You hurt his city. It could even make criminals afraid to come into Gotham. And that could be something you use in a story in the future. Someone is trying to get help against the Batman, and they're going, look, my brother tried to get into Gotham. He's sitting in a penitentiary right now. He had a bigger organization than I do. He's in jail. I'm not touching Gotham City. Also, adventures and missions where it's Batman's detective skills that are front and center. The world's greatest detective hardly ever gets to really exercise those skills. 4. Spread his rogues gallery out, leaving room for more one-shot villains, more regular crime lords, and things like that. Have him track down a drug gang, from street-level thugs to the big cheese in Gotham, then go even higher up the food chain. The big boss in London wakes up one night to see the Dark Knight standing at the foot of his bed. And I don't know about you, but if I was to wake up and see him at the foot of my bed like that, I think that'd make most people, law-abiding or not, almost wet themselves. 5. Have Arkham make more sense. The revolving door the place seems to have would just get shut down if they couldn't keep people in it. I know it's handy for having someone like the Joker be able to get in or out near Gotham, but come on. You need to be more creative than that. That's lazy writing. And not every member of Batman's gallery would be considered insane. Sure, the Joker is nuts, but the Penguin? Having them all in one place, as I said, might seem handy, but it doesn't make sense. You would have these people, they'd be moved somewhere else. The Joker keeps getting out of Gotham. Well, let's put him somewhere else. Let's put him somewhere on the West Coast. Or maybe we'll put him, let's reopen Alcatraz and stick him there. You know, or maybe we'll send him somewhere in the middle of nowhere, so if he does get away, we got a chance to get him before he can find someone to kill. I mean, because even in a world where you have a man who dresses up like a bat and goes out at night, it doesn't make any sense. Batman's relationships, for number 7, with other DC heroes is a bit hit and miss, depending on the time and the writer. He was at one point friends with Superman, while at other times they can barely be civil with one another. Here, Batman would be friends with Superman, although he acts like it's a hassle. What do you want now? But if he doesn't hear from him every so often, he's going, hey, Clark, what's up? 8. Batman's love life is, especially for someone with a secret identity, odd. He's been known to date or otherwise associate with some of the hottest women in the Cape set. And supermodels are normally hanging off his arm when he's out of the cowl. But very few get truly close to him. His relationship with Catwoman, for example, has led to near matrimony at least once and nearly caused a rebellion at one point as well. Anything serious from the superheroine or supervillain set would need to be set sometime down the road. Again, Batman has to get his feet under him. Gotham City has to be established, the whole deal. Perhaps at some point he could marry or have been married, and happily so, but something happens to her or she just leaves him. This shows that he can be happy and be Batman, and also show maybe what happens if the marriage falls apart. The Huntress, who is in at least one continuity the daughter of Batman and Catwoman. Sometime in the future, it's discovered that Bruce and Catwoman did have a fling, and in fact, she got pregnant and gave the child up for adoption somewhere. You know, she just disappeared before she was showing and didn't come back until she got back in shape. Now that girl is back, wants to be part of the legacy of the Bat, or some other woman has a Bat Sprague. And now we get to the crazy idea. This is the one that, if you watch this, is probably going to annoy you, or you're going to be sitting there going, I never thought of that. And then you'll probably be going, that's crazy. That's stupid. But anyway, Gotham City has had a protector for a long time. It's rumor, myth, and legend. They tell of a man from the shadows. Some say he isn't human. Since the 1890s, a mysterious figure has stalked the night in Gotham City. Bruce Selwyn Wayne was the first of the Wayne family to put on a cowl and cloak to stalk the night fighting crime. Basically, this idea makes Gotham by Gaslight the origin for the whole mythos. It brings the story, with minor changes, into canon, like Bruce's middle name. I always heard it was Thomas. I don't know. Some may hate the idea, and I could see why they would. It opens the possibility, though, for Batman stories through the decades and or centuries, and you don't have to do any time travel for it. You just have someone with the means of the time doing the best they can to keep Gotham from flying to pieces. Or maybe they're traveling elsewhere to be the Batman. Now, every generation of Wayne men, maybe a few women, have donned the mantle of the Bat. Then Thomas Wayne, and probably his father, to make this work time-wise, decided it was time for the Batman to be laid to rest. It was a new time. Vigilantes weren't needed. The time of the Batman was over. His job was done. Then, by the time Bruce Thomas Wayne is born, the Batman has become little more than a legend. But without that legend, crime now grows in Gotham City. They don't have him to fear anymore. So they start coming back, and it gets worse. Thomas Wayne tries to fight it using more civilized methods. He fails. Bruce rediscovers the family legacy when he finds a reference to it in his father's journals, which leads him to a hidden cache of journals, or cache, I've heard it pronounced both ways, of journals where the men of the family, they've kept their knowledge of how to be the Batman. While armed with the secret of his family past, Bruce travels the world to learn more skills, to take up where his great-grandfather left off, to become the Bat. And so once again, that shadow is cast over Gotham City. Now, maybe one of those journals fell into the hands of Kate Kane, inspiring her to take up the mantle of Batwoman. She's supposed to be Bruce's cousin, although she's related to Bruce through his mother. But perhaps her side of the family has been allies of the Waynes in their fight for justice, and that's how one of the journals fell into their hands. A major change, I know, but it would set this reality's Batman apart from all the others, that's for sure. Anyway, tell me what you think. There are a lot of other things you could do, but I think I'll call this a halt right here. I've probably caused enough chaos for one day. Comments are welcome. You have a better idea, I'd really like to hear it. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button below and feel free to do the other YouTube things. I'm Pheasant Glop. And remember, it's all in fun and your mileage may vary.